out-sniping Chromie and forcing the Divine Shield on Chromie instead of Greymane, for example, is crazy. That's one of the strongest abilities that you have in your setup to save your melee assassin so that he can dive into the opponent's team and take out a squishy. And if you don't have that available, you need to kite back the entire time. They were trying to run, owls were coming in over and over and over, and then at that point you just can't do anything anymore. So Tyrande really making all the difference in the last team fight there and allowing Fnatic to push this aggressively forward and then getting their kills. Especially, of course, with ETC and Arthas just slowing them down with stun after stun and Frozen Tempest and Howling Blast.
So what was the final stat count there on the Tyrande Owls?
130.
130. We're going to write that down because the highest that I've seen so far here in HGC Europe has been 75.
If you write it down, 129.
129. All right, so 129
I rounded up.
is the highest. We'll see if anyone can beat that record. And if they do, I am going to be watching that game because that was a scary amount of damage. Let's go ahead and look at the HGC cheers here for the global scene as we continue to keep moving on up. 21,728,000 has been increased to 21,742,169.
You're doing better with big numbers. I'm proud of you.
I've been working on it every single day.
Yeah.
I'm glad you noticed.
I'm going to bring you a cookie.
You notice the little things, man.
Yeah.
A brownie, please. Brownies are the best.
All right. Will do.
So, we continue to climb quicker and quicker. Nice little jump there.
I still want to say that I think it's incredibly impressive how well the Zealots played on the last map. Getting Fnatic to a point where they nearly lose the map, where by all rights they should have lost, is fascinating if you think where the Zealots come from. We're talking about a team that just made it into the HGC this season. And after a good start, they had a little bit of a rocky middle. Now they lost their shot caller and their front player. They play with a sub player that does incredibly well for them. I mean, big shout out to Lauber here. The way that he presents himself this weekend as a substitute player for the Zealots after just practicing for 2-3 days with the team, that is incredibly impressive.
And if you want to see more Lauber, make sure to check out his Open Division team, the Leftovers. They're going to be playing in the next couple of weeks too. #1 here in Europe. Yeah,
playoffs are actually starting right now for the Open Division, so that's going to be super interesting to see. We have 8 teams that are currently fighting for the top 2 spots where they can then challenge the Crucible teams in HGC to take one of the spots over. And of course, when we're talking about Lauber, you can also check him out on Twitter at Johann Lauber, and you will see updates about the team and also when they play in the playoffs to get into HGC.
Now, with that said, that was Dragonshire. This is a battleground the Zealots have been notoriously great on. But Fnatic, not so much. But the other battlegrounds, can the Zealots still match them there? Let's go to battleground #2, which will be Cursed Hollow. This one is going to be picked by Fnatic. We'll have Zealots go for the first pick instead. And that's what I want to see here. Can they still go toe-to-toe on a different battleground? Sky Temple, of all battlegrounds. We will probably see that later on down the line.
Also, did Fnatic wake up? I can see totally just like waking up 10 minutes before the game and saying like, all right, guys, we ready? By now he had a coffee, he had the first game, there's a little bit of adrenaline pumping.
Yeah.
So now things are heating up. Fnatic definitely realized that they can't take this too easily. I mean, they need to take it serious to an extent.
Sure.
They have already said they're not going to practice as much anymore as they did before they were qualified for BlizzCon, simply because they attended every single event this year. They had very little breaks, and they said we are starting to burn out. We need to make sure that when we are at BlizzCon, that we can show up in full strength. So, of course, they still practice, just not with the same crazy practice routine that they had before.
Yeah, just casually being good, which is something I wish I could have as a mode.
I mean, even if they just reduce it to half, they still have 3 hours every day or 4 hours depending on which part they use. Most of the teams in Europe have currently 5 days to 6 days of scrimming and then 2 scrim blocks per day with 3 to 4 hours each. So that's actually quite a bit. Times for all of the teams are basically by now exactly the same. Some teams are trying to get an extra scrim block in if they feel the need. I think Expert is currently said to be the team that scrims by far the most in terms of time that they put in, but all of the European teams right now have a pretty solid schedule for it.
Well, as we get ready for Cursed Hollow, Schwimby gets the win in game #1, but the rest of Fnatic should be waking up and get ready for game #2. And I'm wondering if we're going to get that fall stat coming in from Quackness. We've seen it a few times from Hostwabs on this battleground, but if we do get those globals rolling in, this is usually the battleground where you have them popping up a little bit more often compared to others.
I have to say, while we are going into the draft, that I really enjoyed the last game and also the stacking process. There's a lot of discussion always about talents that you can stack endlessly. We had similar discussions with, for example, Asmodan in the past. But I think it's actually absolutely awesome if you see someone that is able to land these skill shots so often. Of course, it's made easier later on after you get the cooldown reduction on 13, especially in big team fights. But it's something that, as an opponent, you need to be aware of. If the game drags out until 25-30 minutes, then you are very well aware that there is a good chance that this is going to hurt a lot in the long run. So you need to try and close out the game a little bit faster. So the dynamic between a bit of a weaker early game or a completely different focus on Tyranda's playstyle in the early game to compared to what we have in the late game, I really think it's pretty cool to watch.
It puts the game on a timer. And Fnatic knows that moment. You can actually go in and identify when that game turned around, when the stack started hitting the bottom right side of the keep and they were able to start sniping that Chromie.
And I think the playstyle of Tyrande really, the one thing that I think is very cool with her is that it demands different playstyles from the hero itself. Because in the early game, the idea is that you roam with someone that has a stun, you use your Lunar Flare as a follow-up stun, and then you are in a situation where you are trying to get snipes in. So you are trying to simply snipe a target early on. And your owls are doing a bit of damage, but it's more a scouting tool for you and an attempt to get early stacks going.
Yep.
And then later on, when you all of a sudden have a significant amount of stacks, when your opponent teams gets also stronger, you become a bit more squishy, you can easier die in those fights, so you're starting to fall a little bit farther back and you try to send those owls in for damage. Shrimpy's playstyle was a lot more aggressive than what we usually see. The Tyrande flank, for example, from behind when he was trying to also flank Chromie in the last battle. But just this different playstyle from an early to a late game, that was pretty sweet.
All about getting those dings. One of the best things you can do here in the HGC. All right, so we're getting up for the Curse Hollow Battleground. Dahaka's been banned out. Tasset are banned out for Fnatic. So Zealots on the left side. We'll see if they're going to move into that ETC right away. I think you do.
It has. I would be surprised to not see ETC being picked here. First of all, you have Dahaka banned out. ETC provides you with the global, and at the same time, I mean, the only other hero that I could see, if not ETC, is Abathur. They go for ETC though. Lauber loves the hero, has played him several times already for the Zealots. Again, I could see an Abathur being chosen by one of the two teams, considering that usually on Cursed Hollow we see him banned a lot. And I think that was probably also the thought process for Zealots, since with Chat they have a good Abathur player. But right now they go into ETC as expected, so they can use him as a global or as a main tank, depending on the situation. But how is Fnatic going to react here?
Especially with the Dahaka being banned out, makes it much easier. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to see that Abathur getting into the bushes, but it does make your life much easier if you ever do need a body soak to not have a Dahaka available for the opposing team. Fnatic, now thinking about their pickups right away, there is always a movement into the Valas, taking out the Uther 2 to make sure to keep it away from the ETC. Great tactics here available for the draft.
Yeah, so Fnatic at this point, they have of course options with Uther is another one that you can take, as you said. Uther, Rhaegar is usually the two healer that you think about, that are at least the foundation for your team. If Fnatic picks Uther, then they're taking him away from ETC, so a Mosh Pit with the Divine Shield wouldn't be an option. Here's Abathur, as I pointed out, this time not banned on the map, so it would make up for a great early pick. They let Uther go because they want to make sure that they have Greymane for the Abathur copy and also to symbiote him. There would have been a chance if they take Uther, for example, with Abathur or any other hero with Abathur, that Zealots are trying to deny Greymane to them, especially since Zealots have been playing a fair share of Greymane themselves. So in this setup right now, Fnatic securing Greymane and also making sure that they're having Abathur now, most likely going to be played by Shrimpy.
That does mean that Genji is up with the Uther and the ETC, which all three of those just naturally bleed together. They have the synergy.
Exactly. As you said, Divine Shield, you can use it either for ETC with a Mosh Pit, you can use it for Genji, and then with the Dragon Blade he goes in and takes the swings. You really enable him heavily. So it's not necessarily what they are going for right now, but it's definitely something that they're currently actively discussing.
It's a risk that you have to consider if you're picking the Abathur Greymane on your side.
Exactly. So they go into a different style now with Arthas and Vala. That's a different option. It's more similar to what we've seen Fnatic done in the last game. But that was definitely a discussion right now. If you've ever been, if you ever listen to any scrims that are sometimes being held publicly on streams where you hear about communication, you probably know that normally when you have picks where you have several ways to go, and in this case it was either something along the lines of Arthur's Vala, getting a bit of range damage in, or having Genji with Uther. Normally there's a lot of discussion going on and a lot of people are just like chipping in, okay, how about we go down this path? What does our opponent do if we do that right now? What do we leave open? What do we have to ban out? And then of course the shot caller and the main drafter has to make the decision, and at the end, for now Vala and Arthur's are taken. And that is pretty much so far the draft that Fnatic used on the last map.
Yep. They got the ETC, Arthas, and the Rhaegar, but they eventually went to the Vol later on. Now, Fnatic needs to worry about what could Zealots grab early game that allows them to kind of push us in and punish this Abathur pick if they are looking at bans or heroes they want to move into. Their ban that they're looking at right now is going to be the Lucio.
Yeah, they ban out Lucio. The reason for the Lucio ban is, so first of all, you can target here in general. You have already Uther and Rhaegar out there, so you could have target both of them, or one of them. One of the reasons why you're a bit afraid of Lucio is because Zealots have shown with chat several plays where they go into double support with this, and Lucio is the one that is the utility healer. It gets insane healing power later on in the game, of course, but it's also a hero that allows you to chase heavily with Arthas and ETC and allows you to also escape. And since Zealots have shown that style, that added support or that utility that comes with Lucio in the second support role is something that Fnatic fears more than allowing the Zealots to get either Uther or Rhaegar. So I actually like that ban a lot more than them banning out Rhaegar or Uther.
The escape is very important too. You touched on that because of the Ultimate Evolution. And whenever you pop an Ultimate Evolution when you're here on Fnatic, you want to fight right then or get something out of it. If they're able to just amp it up and deuce away from the fight, it's painful.
Chase potential as well. You get an early kill in any kind of situation. There's one snipe happening. Your opponent tries to retreat. If there's a false stat with Gust, it's a bit of a different story. But outside of that, you can with Lucio just simply chase. Arthur's going to have a fantastic time to move in with Frozen Tempest and Howling Blast. And then what started with one hero dying and you having to give up a team fight could all of a sudden end up with you getting wiped. So that is extremely dangerous. So Fnatic with a very smart ban here, considering that Zealots have shown this style several times already.
Uther and a Nubrak will get picked up. You need something that can control the front line a little bit here. Nubrak gets some choices. Uther also great with the Greymane. You get the Divine Shield. Between what you have for options to deal with an ETC, you have Johanna and you have a Nubrak. A Nubrak gives you a little bit more mobility, some dive potential with that Greymane, whereas Johanna is a little bit harder on this battleground because you can't rotate as easily and you won't be able to get as many flanks, so you kind of get poked down a lot. I like the pickup for the Nubrak just to give Fnatic a little bit more control.
Yeah, it's also very dive heavy for them now. And they have shown Breeze and also Wooby a lot on Anubarak. Traditionally, it's Breeze that plays the hero. We're still waiting for Wooby to pick up a hero unless they add another heavy frontliner that Breeze could jump to. Then the overlap in the hero pool could come into play here. For Zealots, on the other hand, it's now about supports. Rhaegar is obvious. Would be surprised to not see Rhaegar being taken here. The question is more so, what do they take on the last spot now that their Lucio combo was banned away?
About to find out. There's the Rhaegar. Will it be more damage? Will it be a little bit more engaged, more push potential? It's going to be the fall set, so they're going for a little bit more global power here, being able to show up on a dime.
That also allows them to simply use Gust. They can play around an Abathur copy with Gust. Anytime there's a heavy engage, they can also use that to get a bit of an isolation. So that can definitely work out for them. And they have now globals that they can use. Whereas Fnatic doesn't really have a global. They have Abathur on the other hand. So that side soak, thanks to the symbiote or even body soak, is definitely a thing. But taking Falstad is also going to limit Abathur's ability to move onto lane to body soak, since Falstad can always try and fly into sniper.
Abathur more of a looming presence here for Fnatic. So Wooby, what are you going to play here? Gonna need an off lane. Something that can help out in the fights. Maybe a little bit more tanky too.
Yeah, I mean, right now you are also in a spot where I actually don't really know what they're going to take for him. They could maybe go for a bit of aggression and try and use something like even Sonya. Doubt it a bit. It's not really where they usually go. I don't see Leoric happening here. Tyrael actually makes sense. I like Tyrael, yes. Tyrael actually is pretty decent here, especially since he allows you to control the bosses a lot better on the map with Sanctification. I was thinking for a moment if Leo could be a thing, but then first of all on Curse you don't get as much out of him than you do on other maps outside of boss fights. And then also you're going up against that Falstad, so playing around him with a good Gust against the rest of the team would isolate him completely. So you don't really want to. He doesn't really fit with the comp depth lane.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit of equalization too when it comes to boss control, the Holy Ground, the Sanctification. If your team does find that Arthas has gotten to a spot where he jumps on your Greymane, you can drop Sanct, turn around, and try and blow up that target with a stun from Uther. So now they have a lot of options for the team. Fnatic looking pretty strong, but I actually kind of like Zealot's draft overall. Looks very strong.
Yeah, their draft looks incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
I love the style they played with double support. Now they added a bit more damage to the setup and the global. It's just Fnatic on the other side. That's the biggest problem here right now.
That's always the issue, isn't it?
Yeah, it kind of is.
You draft good, but
You play against
enough.
Fnatic.
Yeah, you're playing against a team that is 34-8 this season, so good luck with that. Let's go to game number 2. It's going to be Cursed Hollow. Will we see a win from Zealots? Can they even match against Fnatic on a different battleground, or will Fnatic come out swinging and grab a 2-0?
Yeah, Fnatic was impressive already on map number 1. Now we're heading into map number 2. We are on Cursed Hollow, and it is Gran Pakete this time on the left side on Rega. Lauber on ETC with Poik on Vala this time for the Zealots. Our blue team, Zarmany on Arthurs, and Shad is playing Falstad.
On the right side in the red, Schwimpy is playing Abathur. Breeze on a Nubarak, Wubby on Tyrael, Quacknick's playing Greymane, and Smexy will be your Uther player. Fnatic up 1-0 in the series, but Zealots, they hung with them pretty tight. In fact, we're looking like they could get a win on them in game number 1. Fnatic changing the pace towards the late game.
Yeah, the first game was definitely pretty awesome to observe here. It was a lot of fun to watch. But, I mean, right now we're having Season Marksman taken for Falstad, so already indicating that it's going to be an auto attack build from him, not heading into any kind of mage set that we've now seen peak up a little bit. Nice aggression here from Fnatic, so we have at the bot lane a heavy commitment by the Zealots to try and break through the wall, and they're about to hit the second tower, whereas up to the top. Fnatic is doing pretty much the same thing, with Wubby being extremely motivated here, even jumping over the wall.
Gates can't hold back Wubby, especially when you have heals from Smexy. So the 4 continue to push on the top side. The Zealots should try to answer back themselves on the bottom, and they're doing so, taking some time, but they are working through the towers slowly but surely. Shad just needs to play a bit defensive and not get picked off. Fnatic looking for that quick experience as they want to get to 10 as quick as possible, especially when you have the Abathur.
Yeah, and right now when we talk about experience, Fnatic is also the one who is going to take a significant lead thanks to the top that they're just completely busting through. At the bot lane, Zealots are just not that fast. They're currently waiting for the next minion stack to move in to soak the tower shots. So they are a lot slower than their counterparts. They will get the fort eventually, but in the meantime, Fnatic has started their own rotation back down to the bot lane.
Falstad did make a nice little move where they moved to the middle and went for a turret, so they at least got something out of it. But they cannot lose Shad here. They do. Quacknick dives forward with Smexy bringing out the stun, and Falstad gets picked off.
Yeah, Falstad taken out, and that was, of course, a bit of an unfortunate position here for the Zealots. But again, there is someone on the lane, so Falstad is going to be back soon enough. They don't lose out on too much experience. But Fnatic just simply doesn't care. They go for the next tower. They have now half a level lead, the earlier level 4 talent, and are starting to be extremely aggressive and dominant on the map.
They are forcing Fnatic to respond to them, and if you can do that with an Abathur composition, you are in a great spot. The ability for the Zealots to push in and break down a tower isn't as strong. Falstad ramps up later on. Vala with the Hungry Arrow build takes some time to get those stacks up too, so they use that Greymane to full advantage, and it works out great. Look at the experience with the additional kill here on the Falstad. They're at 5 to 4 3/4.
And now, of course, the first tribute is going to spawn any second. Gran Pakete is taking the Siege Giant camp to the top left, whereas we have Fnatic claiming their own. And trying to claim a kill. Poik is low, and with now Wubby moving in, there's no chance for Vala to escape. She's down there going for Zarmany. They're not going to be able to get Arthurs, but they can definitely get the second tower if they want to. They need to start rotating towards the tribute now as well, though. And Fnatic is really making it work. They have an Abathur composition, which traditionally is a bit weaker in the early game, and they are the ones who are not only getting the kills, they're completely dominating this early game right now against an ETC Arthur's Vala comp, which is starting to become a bit crazy and also very scary for the Zealots, because the blue team is the one that's supposed to do well in the early game here, and they are far from taking the lead.
I think Fnatic's woken up.
As I told you, I think it's really just Wubby had his first coffee, you know, like he got the juices going, and now all of a sudden they are ready. First game was a bit of a wake-up call.
Well, the tribute goes over to Fnatic. They grab that easily on the top right side. With Abathur dropping down the mines and the Zealots losing on their Vala, they were unable to contest that area. While Fnatic groups again on the bottom, looking for Zarmany. They have the body blocks. Smexy standing right in front, not quite able to block the engage. Lauber comes around for a fight, maybe wanting to turn it into an engage, but Breeze just drops an impale and keeps him away.
I actually think what happened here is that Smexy's mom, after he was feeding the early game of map number 1, just like came into his room and started yelling at him. And was just like, "What are you doing? I'm watching the games down there. Stop feeding!" And finally come through, and he's just like, all right, I didn't have any food. So she brought him probably something to snack, and now he's just on full force here, saving his teammates.
Family matters. That's
Yeah.
what we learned here at the HGC.
Exactly. It's just a family keeping you in the game here and keeping you motivated, keeping you honest, you know? So big shout out to Smexy's mom.
Wubby has been sitting here this entire time and has called out that the Zealots have 3 people in the middle. So Breeze came in for a flank with 4 showing up. They're playing safer. Finally, they make the call to jump in on Poik. Poik does get grabbed upon, but Smexy is unable to follow up into a stun. But Fnatic continues to just dictate this game. Top lane's being soaked by Abathur. There's a tribute up and available. Breeze comes over for the interrupt. Can he get it? Wubby's got it.
Yeah, Wubby's got his back already as Breeze is being focused here by the opponents. But now he's moving in and Lauber is starting to feel the punishment of Fnatic. They are moving in heavily, and in the meantime, Abathur is also making sure that he tries to push the rest of the lanes, and that especially is true for the top lane. Grand Paquette interrupted as he tries to channel the tribute. It's tribute number 2. Top lane still with the pressure. Wubby jumps in. Here comes the stun. Cleanse is true, but Falstad is down. So is Vala and Arthurs. It's a triple kill as Fnatic is